What is the best minigun is a common yet unfortunately completely unanswerable question. Like many classes in TF2, the heavy doesn't have a primary that's better in all situations. So then the question devolves into which minigun is best most of the time. And if that's the question, then the answer would probably be the Tomislav. Fastest video ever, right?
No!
Well, no, let me explain to you why this thinking isn't satisfactory. Imagine 4 weapons. 3 of those weapons are exceptional at one specific scenario, but only average at all others. While the 4th is exceptional at 2 scenarios, but below average at all others. You can probably see the problem here. So maybe you might think to ask, well, if you had to pick one minigun to use forever, what would that be? If that's the question, then my answer would probably be the stock minigun. And that's a good way of determining an average, but again, it has problems. Again, imagine 4 weapons. 3 of those are just the absolute best at one specific scenario, but completely unusable on all others. But 1 is just kind of below average at every scenario. Would you be comfortable calling that one the best of the 4? I wouldn't. Because of this, the best minigun often has 2 different best miniguns, one for offense and one for defense, with also maybe another for specifically 5 CP. But that's usually the Tomislav anyway, since they're open and you always have to be on your toes and just, yeah, no, we're talking about offense and defense miniguns. Starting with offense, as it's a lot less controversial, the Tomislav is hands down the best minigun for offense. All of its stats benefit offensive play. The silent rev is very good at sneak attacks, which admittedly can be done on defense too, however will always be more effective on offense, since the reward is capping the point and not just,
"Hey, look, we made you respawn. Hey, have fun back at point. Hey."
The 20% slower firing speed can for sure come in handy actually for preserving ammo, as you're not guaranteed to have a dispenser up on offense. The 20% faster spin-up time obviously favors offense since, well, you're the one attacking. It's by design made to make pushing easier. And the accuracy bonus is good for firing on particular targets. Seeing as defending teams don't really tend to be as clumped up together as the attacking team, say on a payload or on a control point, or just at a choke in general, this is often more handy on offense. And it also ensures you don't have to worry as much about positioning, as that's something the defending team will always and should always have an advantage on. Now, on defense, the Tomislav is not the best. It's still very good and well-rounded, but in general, as a defending team, you have the luxury of picking where you want to rev. There is just more opportunity to take advantage of the higher close quarters damage and larger spread of the other miniguns. There's also more likely to be a friendly engineer with a dispenser up.
I built that.
So you don't need to preserve your ammo like how the Tomislav does. However, I will say that if your style of heavy revolves around the flank or just being independent in general, you're still probably better suited for the Tomislav even on defense. So for those reasons, stock is the better minigun on defense. But what if I told you there was another minigun on defense that outshines the stock minigun? The Natasha is without a doubt the best heavy weapons primary in any scenario where your team knows what they're doing, and you have a rather large amount of power classes. It does cater towards defensive play, but if you're on a good enough team, even on offense, it's just so good that it can just about match the Tomislav, though they are admittedly doing very, very different tasks. In other words, it's the best support minigun, and we're talking some juicy, slow the whole enemy team support.
Shoot, son, you're all slow as molasses.
It's a bit hard to tell though. The effects aren't noticeable from the point of view of the heavy firing it. For example, if you're a very good heavy, and you consistently top score, and then switch to Natasha, you'll notice yourself stop top scoring. To put it simply, you just won't be doing as much damage yourself. But if you keep playing with the Natasha, you'll notice yourself winning more games. The Natasha is fully focused on screwing with the enemy team. For that reason, it's also banned in comp, because it's extremely powerful with groups of players that know how to take advantage of slowed enemies. The Heavy's minigun is a sustained fire gun with high ammo. It can effectively make sure the entire enemy team is constantly slowed when pushing, or it can make it extremely difficult for them to punish your team for bad plays because you're just stripping away their mobility. So anyway, to catch you up if you didn't know, the stats read, on hit, you will slow your target. There's a 20% damage resistance when below 50% health and spun up. There's a 25% damage penalty and a 30% slower spin up time. Straight away, looking at the stats, the downsides look extremely severe, and to some extent they are. They do require you to keep them in mind and cause some problems for the heavy. 1v1s, especially when caught with your pants down, running to the front or something, are very, very hard for the Natasha to deal with. Something that the Tomislav or even Stock would have no trouble at all dealing with. Heavies will usually be able to outdamage you, even with the damage resistance. This gets harder when you take into account the slower spin up time. It's less good on offense since the damage penalty means more since you're actually trying to kill the defending team. The slower spin up time on offense makes pushing with it harder, and the damage resistance also means less because of the faster respawn times. Your life just isn't as valuable as on defense, so it'd be better to trade firepower rather than living power. The slowing power, however, is still very useful. It's especially useful on offense after you've made a successful push and you can catch out any escaping enemies. As I said before though, it's very good at stopping offensive pushes completely, stalling the game and denying enemy coordination from being as effective. This weapon is team orientated. If your style of heavy revolves around the flank or just generally doing your own thing, you'd be better off with a different minigun. When you play with your team, the damage downside becomes very negligible. You're allowing your team to kill your target. You're like the bully that holds the nerd in your arms, while the other bully, well, delivers the blows. The Natasha is the easiest minigun to use as well. Let me ask you this, how does the heavy do damage to people? He tracks them with his minigun, that's right. Now let me ask you this, what makes tracking much easier? Your target being constantly slowed does. However, this could also help develop bad habits, and then you get into the debate of what's a crutch and just let's not go with the slowing thing. But it does have a damage resistance, giving the heavy a bit of a safety net if he messes up. For these reasons, the Natasha is often seen as the brain-dead spammy minigun. And I'd probably agree with that, though again, I haven't really made up my mind. It requires more foresight and game sense from the heavy because of the slower rev. However, on defensive holds, that is admittedly very negligible. And also, not to mention, to be fair, most heavy mains are already quite good at this, and now they just need to press the button a little earlier than normal. The Natasha is the best and most annoying minigun by far. It's easy to abuse on open defenses and makes pushing much harder. If it was run more often and people were able to get used to the slow effect, it might be worse, but as it stands right now, it completely throws off everyone who you shoot. And since you're the heavy weapons guy with a minigun and 200 ammo, you should be shooting the entirety of the enemy team at all times. Imagine dying over and over again, not because you're bad or the other team is better, but because of one player on the other team mindlessly pelting you with a slowing effect, letting the rest of his team eat you alive. The other team is just punished harder and has less ability to punish your own team. People have noted that it's only worth using if there's a fast Boston boy on the other team messing you up. Even I thought this. And that makes sense. Like I said, from the point of view of the heavy, the Natasha's biggest upside is slowing down fast targets, since you aren't noticing the effects you're having on the other team as a whole. It for sure destroys scouts and soldiers, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. The Natasha reminds me a bit of the Wrangler. It's good and makes pushing hard, but doesn't outright show you how good it is, and for that reason has been overlooked for a really long time. Despite the Natasha being so strong and annoying, I don't recommend using it as it's boring to play and unfun to play against. Maybe if the game's super sweaty and everyone's trying really hard to win, you can bust it out and be the anchor that helps your team win, but even then it's just kinda cheap. Okay, finally off the broken bit of the Natasha and onto some other things. First of all, I just want to say that Natasha really needs something to help differentiate its look from stock. They look near identical. I mean, it's literally just the same model with a gray barrel and some extra stuff added on. They have the exact same first-person model, and some skins really make me do a double take.
Oh, Sasha. Ah!
The Natasha used to be really bad, or rather the slowing effect used to be really bad. It used to be kind of buggy, and you could spam A and D and mitigate the slowing effect, actually making the Natasha just a worse stock minigun. That however has since been changed, and the slowing effect works as it always should have. I don't really like the design of the weapon myself. I think slowing effects, especially area of effect slowing effects such as the Natasha, are really boring to fight against and also really boring to play. You just do less damage in general, which is less fun, and even when you do kill someone, you don't feel as though you earned it because they're slowed down. Dealing serious damage is one of the main draws to playing heavy in the first place. The Natasha is absolutely viable, as if that's even a question. It outranked stock and even the Tomislav in my opinion, but again, it's just not fun for anyone. So that's the best minigun. I hope you enjoyed. Bye.